Okay, welcome back to the Market with Mario show. Today we've got Mike Naparano with Novoworks, and he's going to talk to us today about truck wraps, all things wraps really, and vehicle graphics, things like that. Um, Mike, kind of tell us a little bit about the some of the truck wraps that you're seeing now. What are some tips that you have for our home service contractors out there that may want to grab some more attention when they're going from job to job?
Well, yeah, that's a good one. Obviously, there's a lot that we discuss with the customer when we're talking wraps. Obviously, what the budget is, how many vehicles, et cetera, because we've got everything from partial wraps to full wraps, of course. But in wrap design, the challenge we run into a lot of times is people are all about the logo, right? They want that logo to be seen. And granted, there's power in your logo. Don't get me wrong, but you really want to get your message across before you worry about your logo, right? And then the next challenge is a lot of people are like, well, hey, we've got 12 bullet points of the things that we offer. Well, let's really boil that down and be simple, because the challenge is that when you're moving, people have limited attention, limited visibility, etc. So we normally say on the side of a vehicle, keep it simple, do the basic power of what you offer, your logo, contact information, whether it's phone number, website, or both. Back or even the front of a vehicle, potentially you could do more because you're typically in a parking space or somebody's behind you in traffic, and you can get a little bit more of your bullet points if you want to do something like that. But leave that to your website. So yeah, that's usually what I tell people is focus more on the website and or your social media side, and direct people there. So but yeah, that's kind of the direction we would typically go. Now, obviously, in your market, your specific market, you do have people parked in front of a home potentially for hours or even days. So that actually lends a slight difference to what's possible, right? You can put a little bit more information in those cases because it is parked in front of a home and you've got active viewers basically driving by that location, rather than your typical commercial guy or somebody that's mobile all the time. So we go through and talk about those niches and the possibilities and kind of go from there for all our customers, basically. If that makes sense.
No, and that makes complete sense. And I love the part that you talked about with the keeping it more simple,
Mm-hmm.
because if you overwhelm
Yeah, yeah.
someone in marketing, then they just don't take any action at all.
Right.
One thing you did mention that was interesting was there's a partial wrap
Mm-hmm.
and there's a full wrap. Kind of
Sure.
talk about the differences
Yeah,
there.
and we even have another option. A lot of people think, especially that hasn't done a wrap before, or haven't even done vehicle graphics on a company vehicle before, they just think anything graphics on a vehicle is called a wrap. Technically, we don't look at it that way. We've got everything from cut vinyl graphics that go on a vehicle to print and cut, which is where we're doing a full color graphic or multiple full color graphics and cut vinyl on a vehicle. We don't consider that a wrap. Still has the marketing power, obviously. Then we go up into, let's say, a partial wrap on a truck, as an example, or a van, which is our most common, obviously, for that niche. We typically would say a partial on a truck would consist of typically bed sides and tailgate, and then we transition to or do a fade through on the front door, or if it's a four door on the back door and maybe into the front door, and make it look like it's not an accident that they're not covering everything, make it part of the design. So it's not like you're just cutting off your wrap, but then the front end is pretty much left simple or left factory. We may put a logo on the hood, we may put a license number obviously on the front fenders, etc. But you can get into something that still has a good punch, but yet is anywhere from, on average, a half to 2/3 of the budget of a full wrap. And then a full wrap, of course, consists of, we're covering pretty much everything except potentially the roof, but we can certainly do roofs as well. So we've done a couple people where they'll do basically, they got a good deal on a red truck or a burgundy truck or a gray truck, and it's not really, doesn't match their look. So we'll actually cover the whole thing because they want, their look is black and white or whatever it might be, and so we'll cover the upper in a matching color so it doesn't look like it's an odd match. So that's common as well. Not as dominant as just people that get a black or a white fleet truck and then we can wrap it, and you can fade to white or fade to black, and it doesn't look again like you've done a partial.
Right. A lot of times, so when someone's trying to build a website,
Right.
The web developer, they need some things from their client.
Sure.
They need logo, they need copy, they need pictures, they need all kinds of things. So,
Sure.
kind of walk me through the process. What do they need from? What do you need from them to get started, and then kind of walk me through the process? I mean, I imagine you have some kind of a mock-up to where they can see it, or do they just trust you with the creativity and say,
No,
okay, this
I
is what
mean,
we're gonna
and we can work multiple ways. We can obviously handle the design side. That's not a problem. If you've already working with a designer, we can work with them to get the design done, etc. So we've got some options there. But as far as initial steps, especially with somebody that's new, right? They haven't done a wrap before. It's a newer company, or they're finally going into that direction. Hopefully, they've got some marketing material or some look and feel that they've already established, and we'll obviously start there. But the main things obviously are their logo, and one of the problems we run into the most is people are sending us these web-based images because that's all they've had done yet.
That's exactly why I asked that.
Yeah.
How do they get the correct logo to you? Like
Well,
a vector
hopefully,
file, or?
yeah, exactly. Vector art is ideal.
Okay.
And for those that don't know what vector is, there's basically two types of art. There's raster art and there's vector art. Raster art is basically made up of pixels, which is like your traditional computer screen, etc. Vector art is made up of mathematical computations, right? So it's points. So if you've got a red square, there's really only very simple math, with the different point coordinates, the sizing of those, and then the color assigned to them, and that's how it establishes a square, right? So we can scale that square infinitely, up and down, and no loss of quality. Obviously, with pixels, anything you scale up or down, you lose resolution. It's not going to look as good. So, hopefully, you've gone to a good quality graphic designer that created your logo, and they've provided you with the vector art as well as your raster art. Now, what I will say is most people that have gotten, let's say, their zip file from their designer or their logo designer, they can't. They see all the files they've given them. Typically, give them PNG, they give them JPEG, they give them AI, they give them PDF. They give them a bunch of different versions, and they may even give them a light and a dark version for dark print, for light print. Typically, any of the vector art, if they unzipped it and they're looking at their files, they can't see those. If they mouse over them or try and open them, they don't open. So most people don't even realize what they are, but those are the vector art. That's what we want. So again, typically that's an AI file, which is Adobe Illustrator, EPS, which is encapsulated PostScript, PDF, which PDF can go both ways. So PDF isn't always vector, but it can contain vector. So a lot of people send me a PDF, and I'm like, sorry, this is still an embedded raster, so I can't use that. But and then of course, what's become more popular lately is SVG, which is another vector format.
What's the timetable for? I mean, obviously, it's on them to get you everything that you need. So once I drop off my truck or my van, send you the files, what kind of a turnaround time are they looking at?
Yeah, that can vary quite a bit, actually. I will say, just on average, from just history, right? So the way we would typically work is, ground zero would be you call up and you say, you know what, hey, I really want to do a wrap. This is kind of what I'm thinking. That's the ideal, is somebody has an idea of what they already like. Either they've seen something on the road, they've seen a competitor's vehicle, or they've seen something that gives them the thought of, hey, I want to wrap my vehicle. Take pictures, bring me examples of those things that you like the look and feel of.
Yeah.
And that always gives us a good starting point. Then what I would typically do is have them bring by the vehicle. I only need it for typically 15 minutes. We'll take some high resolution SLR photos of it, some measurements, and then that's all I need at that point. Some guidance and direction on design, which we kind of just touched on, and then logo files, any critical art, bullet points, etc. And then basically what we'll do is we'll build a design template based on their exact vehicle rather than some generic vehicle. My customers have always loved that. We can use generic stuff, but it's just not as powerful, especially if you've got a custom color vehicle, so or an alternate to a black and white. So that'll allow us to do our first draft of design, and then we'll present it to you digitally. And usually what we'll do is we'll start with a side view. So let's say we'll start with just a driver's side view, and we'll go through the process of design back and forth. Once we've got it ironed out, then we'll take that flow and design the second side, design the rear, and then if there's a front design, then we'll work on the front design as well. And then once everything's approved, then we'll schedule print production. We'll go through print production, then we'll schedule the install. Typical install, again, it's dependent on whether it's a partial or a full, but I would say typical is 1 to 2 days. It can go as long as 3, including all the prep work we have to do depending on what we're doing to the vehicle. But that's pretty average. As far as calendar time for all that, I would say on the fast side, we've done stuff in 2 weeks. I'd say more realistic for most of the customers, especially when it's their first time we're doing a vehicle for them. It's typically as much as a month or so. We've got a couple customers that we've spent 3 months plus on just design. Mm-hmm. Let's just say that the wife or partner was kind of a little bit more picky, right? So, you know, we've gone through a period where we do design for forever, and then we'll go to production. And, you know, so that's a general ballpark of options. But again, usually what we can do is if you've got a goal in mind, you know what you want, you know, we can give you a pretty close timeline pretty quick, typically.
Yeah.
Especially once we've gone through the design process. One of the other things that we do that a lot of our competitors don't do and haven't done for years is a lot of the shops will include design as part of the wrap. We don't do that, and I'll go into why. When it's included as part of the design, they'll typically have 1 to 2 designers, and they'll spend usually no more than 4 to 8 hours on design. You'll pick from 1 to 3 designs, then they'll give you like an hour of tweaks, and then you're set, right? So you've got a little less control, but if you don't feel like you need control, that's not a bad option, right? But here's the thing. So since they didn't charge you for design, let's say you go through the whole process, they wrap your truck, you're ready for wrap 2, and you find that you've had problems with the wrap, or you've had problems with the shop, or whatever it might be. Well, guess what? Since they didn't charge you for design, they technically own that design.
Wow.
It is their property. So you are kind of SOL.
Wow.
So a lot of people do not realize that. I've had plenty of customers come to me over the years that either A, didn't use us, or B, we never even had the opportunity to use them, and they came to me and said, hey, I had 4 vehicles done by this other company, we haven't been happy, can you do it for us? Yeah, sure. Well, they send me a picture of their vehicle and say, can you recreate this? And I'm like, some vehicles, no problem, we can recreate. Sometimes as we look at it, we're like, you don't have the art? It's like, no, we didn't pay them for the art, so they own the art. So, and we can't even technically we can redesign based on that design if it's simple enough or something that we can do. Here's the problem: that company can still come after them after that's done for an infringement on the design.
Oh my goodness.
So again, something a lot of people just don't know. I mean, if you don't know, you don't know. Until you go through it, then you know. So anyhow, so we do charge for design, but what that gives you is you get more control of that part of the budget, and you own the design. So, you know, if you've got a simple design, you come to me with a couple examples of vehicles you already like, you've got a good vision, we sit down and we can knock out a design in 3 hours, then you're only paying for 3 hours of design.
Yeah.
Right? If you want to be like the company I talked about where we went back and forth for 3 months and you're willing to pay that, you're welcome to do that. Now, they spent more on design than they did on the first vehicle, but they were planning on doing a fleet, so, you know, it made sense for them. So
Yeah, they were thinking long term. So that kind of leads me into what are a couple of things to avoid? What are some mistakes that you see people make when it comes to vehicle wraps? Like what kind of things would someone want to?
Man, that's a tricky one.
To not do.
Wow. I'm just trying to think of the best explanation. It comes and goes. I mean, you know, again, like we discussed, something that's way too busy. But again, if they're parked all the time in front of a location, then they can be a little busier, right? But make it readable. We've actually had a couple customers in the past and that had the most insane wraps that I would not offer to any other customer, but they already had 30 vans done like that. They own the art. We'll produce it and wrap it for them, but there's plenty of examples out there of vehicles that are way overdone, like you can't make out what it really is.
Yeah.
And then we've got companies that will do something simple, and I mention this now, and I'm sure some people may start keeping an eye out, but let's say you even do something simple, like a simple wrap, or not even a wrap. Let's say we just do print and cut graphics, and they're going on an odd colored vehicle, let's say, right? So, and their logo is, let's say, primarily dark, and it's going on, let's say, a darker blue vehicle. Well, they'll have the designer will outline it in white. Makes sense, right? You want it to pop, right? Looks good in the preview because we're sitting here, like right here in front of a computer screen.
Yeah.
But when it's actually on a vehicle and it's driving or it's moving, the dark on the light against a dark background makes it really hard to see.
Yeah.
It makes it really hard to see, and a lot of people don't realize that. And again, I mention it now, and I'll mention it to customers that might be going down that path, and I'm like, really start paying attention to vehicles that are out there that have that contrast update. You know, it's like either it's a light with a black background or it's a dark with a white background. Yes, it makes it visible because now me and you are just looking at that particular item. But when you see it in action on a dark background, it's really hard to see. It doesn't look very clean. So I normally say make a change to that part of the logo design to give you that contrast, and we go from there.
Gotcha.
Those are two of the big ones that I normally see.
So let's say that I am, I own a landscaping company, roofing company, something like that. I'm like, okay, I'm ready. I want to do a truck wrap. I want to wrap my trailers. How do they get in contact with you? What's the best way to reach you to get things started?
Obviously, I mean, the phone is typically our most common. Obviously, people hit the websites and our social media, but typically it would be a phone call just to 972-384-0940. You can obviously hit our website, which does need some work, I will say. It's just Novoworks, NOVOWORKS.com. And then, of course, our social media is Novoworks on all traditional social media. We're the most active on Facebook. We're also on Instagram. We've got a little bit on others, but those are really, Facebook's probably my most active one that we're on. So I get a lot of messages through the Facebook page, and that's a good spot to start as well. And you can see a little bit more examples of all the stuff that we do beyond wraps, but obviously wraps are on there as well.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you coming on, Mike, and you definitely shared a wealth of knowledge with our audience, and I know they're going to be better for it. And if you are in need of a vehicle wrap, give Mike a call.